For the record.
A regional seminar for parliaments of the Caribbean, accelerating parliamentary action on climate change for a resilient and sustainable region. Senator Laurel Lezama-Lee Sing, Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago.
This morning we had a very instructive session on statistics and data and the use of statistics and data to inform decisions regarding climate change. There were 4 panelists: Mr. Phillips from ECLAC, MP Mangre from Suriname, Senator Miraj from Trinidad and Tobago, and Dr. Bo Tiwari, former parliamentarian and former Pro-Vice Chancellor of the University of the West Indies. And we discussed this morning amongst the panelists and the members of the audience the use of data, as in the collection of data. What is the data that we need to use to drive the decisions that we make? How is that data going to inform legislative decisions, national policies? Are there agencies to collect this information? What are the challenges in getting this data so that it can drive the decisions that we make? It was a very stimulating conversation, and very scary realities were presented as well, because we've realized that if we don't take decisions driven by data, we stand very much to lose a lot economically, socially, land infrastructurally. For instance, Senators Miraj and Dr. Bo Tiwari presented where if by 2050 a Category 5 hurricane hits Trinidad and Tobago, for instance, the bulk of the coastline will be underwater. And 80% of our economy here in Trinidad is driven by businesses along the coastline or in coastal areas. And therefore, what will be the economic impact? What will be the social impact? What will be the educational impact if, for instance, there's a Category 5 hurricane that hits the country? And we've discussed as well the intensity of the dry season that we are now experiencing, and the heaviness and intensity of the rainfall that we are experiencing, the changes in what our traditional weather systems and weather patterns look like as well. And what we have found as well is that some of the challenges that we have insofar as data collection and the use of data would include lack of political will, lack of human resources, lack of credible information, lack of proper data analysis, a lack of a good source for the data, a lack of interoperability so that the agencies are not connecting, there's no nexus in between, and really, we have found that there are so many challenges that we must overcome. We've also found that there is data that exists, but how is that data used? How is it applied? What is the analysis? We have found for the most part that throughout the different islands, there are agencies, particularly academic agencies, that do the data collection. So the UE, St. George's University, University of Guyana, they do intense research in Cayman Islands. There is no tertiary education institution, but a lot of researchers come there to do research in, so their data is driven by the researchers who actually come into the country. And what we have found is that this data is there, but very often there's a disconnect between where the data is and the analysis of the data and its use by ministries and institutions to drive decisions. One good thing coming out of it is that we have found that Guyana and Suriname are 2 of 3 countries in the world that have negative carbon emissions, both being in the South American mainland, both boasting of having wide forested areas that are the lungs of the world, as they put it. And so that is a positive, and Guyana has shared its excellent experience on what its best practice has been with its greenhouse gas emissions and how they control that, how they collect data to inform their decisions. In Grenada, there's a ministry specifically related to climate change. And this is very progressive. It's also very new, so they're still establishing themselves. But we have seen some practices, but the general consensus is that for the most part, the data is there. There is no central repository of the data. The data for climate change is found in different spaces, so it's hard to access, to sift through. And very importantly, something that Mr. Philip from ECLAC said today, he talked about who is the owner of big data, because we know we're going through this data revolution. We know data is the next big thing, So who is the owner of all of this data? Is it the big companies, so the Googles, the Amazons, the Waze? And what is the relationship between sovereign states and these companies, and how do we access the data from them? Who accedes to who? Are they right to tell countries, no, we do not want that information? Their information is very much up to date and real time. The information that the CS, that the national statistical offices would collect, would sometimes be aged data, so therefore potentially not relevant and not suitable to drive decisions.
For the record.
For more information, visit our website at www.ttparliament.org and follow us on Facebook, X formerly known as Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram.